All right. Good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, December 9th, 2025, and welcome to the Week 14 edition of the week that was, as we'll be taking a look at the player and team statistical numbers from all 14 games across week number 14 of the 2025 NFL season. Then stick around for my week 15 power rankings and the updated playoff races in the NFL going into week number 15. All that's coming up. But first, I want to tell a quick ESPN since my Chromebook no longer has the Sports Alerts app. What happened was late Saturday night, I did a update on my Chromebook and it took every app that I had. And I spent pretty much all night Saturday trying to get these apps back on, and they wouldn't come back on. With the exception of most of my social media apps like Facebook. Got the Sports Alerts app on my phone. So what I did earlier was write down the closing over the Dallas Cowboys. The Lions are now 8-5 on the season, while the Dallas Cowboys had their 3-game win streak snapped. They fall to 6-1. All right, we're going to start with individual numbers first for the Lions. Jared Goff went 25 of 34 for 309 yards with 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He averaged 9.1 yards per pass, or per completion, I should say. Took 1 sack for 10 yards. He finished with a QBR of 45.1 and a QB rating of 111. recovered fumble as well. So that's 3 total fumbles, 2 recovered, and 1 lost. Defensively, Deron Bland had 7 tackles with 1 tackle for loss. DeMarvion Overshown, 7 tackles. Siobhan Revel Jr. had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Quentin Williams, 4 tackles and a quarterback hit. Marquise Ball, 4 tackles. Donovan Ezaraku with 4 tackles and a tackle for loss. Shamar James, 4 tackles. Malik Hooker with 3 tackles. Reddy Stewart had 3 tackles as well. Sam Williams Brandon Aubrey was 5 for 5 on field goals, his longest being 63, and 1 for 1 on extra points. He would score 16 of the 30 points for the Cowboys. Brian Anger had 1 punt for 62 yards. All right, now to the team numbers. All right, we'll start with total yardage. 57 plays, 408 yards, and 12 drives for the Lions. They averaged 7.2 yards per play. 76 plays, 417 yards, and 11 total. They would average 5.5 per play. Detroit had 20 first downs, 10 passing first downs, 8 rushing first downs, and 2 first downs via penalties. Dallas, meanwhile, had 25 first downs, 17 through the air, 7 on the ground, and 1 via the penalty. The Cowboys were 6 of 15 on third down and 2 for 2 on fourth down, while the Lions were 3 for 8 on third down with no fourth downs. In the passing department, the Cowboys had 326 yards, 31 completions on 47 pass attempts, averaging 6.3 yards per pass, with 2 interceptions thrown and 5 sacks taken for 50 yards. The Lions had 299 yards passing, 25 completions on 34 attempts, averaging 8.5 per pass, with no interceptions thrown and only 1 sack taken for 10 yards. On the rushing side of things, Detroit had 109 yards on 22 rush attempts. That's 5 yards per carry. Dallas had 91 yards on 24 carries and averaged 3.8 per run. In the red zone, the Cowboys were 1 for 3 and the Lions were 4 for 5. All right. 7 penalties, 76 yards for Dallas. 8 penalties, 50 yards for Detroit. The Cowboys had 3 turnovers, including 2 interceptions thrown and 1 lost fumble. The Lions had no turnovers. And there were no defensive or special teams touchdowns on either side. Time of possession is won by the Dallas Cowboys at 31 minutes, 23 seconds. And the Lions had the ball for 28 minutes and 37 seconds. Closing line was Detroit minus 2.5, and the over-under was 55.5. I picked the Lions at I picked actually the Cowboys at +3, and with an over-under of 54.5. So I took Dallas to win, Dallas to cover. So I ended up losing both those picks. So I start the week 0-1, both straight up and against the spread. On over-unders, I projected this game would go over 54.5 points, and this ended up being the highest scoring game across the league in week 14 with 74 total points. So I start the week 1-0 on over-under totals. Okay, let's move to Sunday, and we'll start with a rather big game as the Buffalo Bills got 2 fourth-quarter interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown, in a 39-34 come-from-behind victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. And this is the first career victory for Josh Allen against Joe Burrow. Buffalo improves to 9-4 on the season, while the Bengals are close to playoff elimination, dropping to 4-9. And I think this is their first losing season, they said, since like 2019 or something. Okay, we'll start with individual numbers, starting off with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen was very effective, 22 of 28 for 251 yards. That's 9 yards per completion. He had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He was sacked 3 times for 18 yards. He had a 96.4 QBR and a QB rating of 139.7. Your leading rushers are James Cook III, 18 carries, 80 yards, and a 4.4 average. Josh Allen added 9 rushes for 78 yards and a rushing touchdown. He averaged 8.7. And Ty Johnson had 2 carries for 25 yards, averaging a team high 12.5. So as a team, the Bills ran 29 times for 183 yards, averaging 6.3 per rush with 1 touchdown. On the receiving side, Dawson Knox led the way with 6 catches, 93 yards on 7 targets and a 15.5 average. Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 41 yards and a touchdown on 5 targets. He averaged 10.3. James Cook would add two receptions for 31 yards on 2 targets. That's a 15.5 average. Gabe Davis, 2 for 21 on 2 targets and a 10.5 average. Khalil Shakir, 2 catches, 16 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. He averaged 8. Keon Coleman, same numbers, 2 catches, 16 yards, but without the touchdown. He had 3 targets and averaged 8 as well. Ty Johnson, 2 for 14 yards on 3 targets with no touchdowns. He averaged 7. Jackson Hawes, 1 catch, 1 target for 3 yards, and that goes for a touchdown. The other name I didn't mention is Tyrell Shavers, 1 catch, 16 yards on 1 target. Bills receivers had 22 receptions for 251 yards, averaging 11.4 per reception with 3 touchdowns and 27 targets. All right, James Cook fumbled the ball twice, lost 1. Defensively for the Bills, Jordan Poyer led the team with 8 tackles. Shaq Thompson, 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit. Cole Bishop with 6 tackles as well. Teron Johnson, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Matt Milano, 5 tackles, I should say. Deion Walker, 4 tackles. Maxwell Hairston, 3 tackles, all solo, with 2 passes defense. Jordan Hancock, 3 tackles. Tre'Davious White with 3 tackles. AJ Espinosa with 3 tackles and a pass defense. Dorian Williams, 3 tackles. And as a team, they had 63 tackles with 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 7 passes defense, 5 quarterback hits, and a touchdown, which was scored by Christian Benford. That was the interception return for a score in the fourth quarter. He had 1 tackle a sack, a tackle for loss, a pass defense, and a quarterback hit along with that pick six. All right. So the two Buffalo interceptions came from Christian Benford, which he took back 63 for a touchdown, and the other came from AJ Epinesa for 1 yard. All right. Ray Davis had 4 kick returns for 84 yards, averaging 21, long return of 27. Ty Johnson had 2 kick returns for 46 yards, long one was 27. He averaged 23 per return. All told, that's 6 kickoff returns for 130 yards, a 21.7 average. Khalil Shakir had 1 punt return for 9 yards. Matt Prater was 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 26, and 4 for 4 on extra points. He scored 7 points. And the Bills did not punt in this game. For the Bengals, Joe Burrow was 25 of 36 for 284 yards, averaging 7.9 per completion. 4 touchdowns in those 2 fourth-quarter interceptions. He took 1 sack for 8 yards. QBR was 78.4. QB rating was 106.7. Rushing-wise, Samaje Perine had 6 carries, 31 yards, averaging 5.2. Chase Brown, only 12 carries, 23 yards. He did score a touchdown, but only averaged 1.9 per run. Jamar Chase ran once for 8 yards. So in total, rushing was 19 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown, and a 3.3 average. The longest rush for the Bengals was 9 yards. All right, on the receiving end, T. Higgins, 6 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns on 11 targets, average of 15.3. Mike Gesicki, 6 for 86 and a touchdown on 6 targets, 14.3 average. Jamar Chase, 5 for 44 yards, 8 targets, and an average of 8.8. Andre Yosivas, 2 catches, 17 yards on 3 targets, 8.5 average. Noah Fant had a catch for 15 on 2 targets. Chase Brown, 3 catches, 12 yards on 4 targets, and a touchdown. Tanner Hudson, 1 catch, 11 yards, 1 target. Samaje Perine, 1 catch, 7 yards on 1 target. Bengals receivers with 25 receptions for 284 yards, 11.4 average, with 4 touchdowns on 36 targets. All right. There is no fumbles for the Cincinnati Bengals, but Oren Brooks did recover 1. And on defense, Geno Stone finished the game with 9 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. Jordan Battle also had 9 tackles plus a pass defense. Barrett Carter, 7 tackles. Joseph Osai, 5 tackles and a TFL. Demetrius Knight Jr., 5 tackles. TJ Slayton Jr., 5 tackles, a sack, and a TFL, plus a quarterback hit. Dax Hill, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Joe Giles Harris, 4 tackles. BJ Turner, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Cedric Johnson, 3 tackles and a QB hit. Chris Jenkins, 3 tackles. BJ Hill, 3 tackles, a sack, plus a tackle for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Jalen Davis had 3 tackles. And as a team, the Bengals had 70 tackles with 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 3 passes defense, and 5 quarterback hits. Bengals defense did not record an interception. On kick returns, Charlie Jones had 5 for 138, long of 35, and a 27.6 average. Samaje Perine, 2 for 49, and a 24.5 average. His long was 25. So that's a total of 7 punt returns, or kick returns rather, for 187 yards and an average of 26.7. There were no punt returns by the Bengals. Evan McPherson, no field goals, but 4 for 4 on extra points, and those were the 4 points he would score in this game. Ryan Reckow, 2 punts at 79 yards, averaging 39.5 with a long punt of 57. All right, let's go to team stats now for this game. All right, the Bills ran 60 plays for 416 yards. They had 9 total drives, averaging 6.9 yards per play. The Bengals had 338 yards on 56 plays with 9 total drives, averaging 6 yards per play. All right. Cincinnati had 25 first downs, 18 through the air, 4 on the ground, and 3 via the penalty. Buffalo had 22 first downs, 13 passing, 7 rushing, and 2 off of penalties. The Bengals finished 10 of 12 on third down with no fourth downs, while the Bills were 6 of 11 on third down and 3 for 4 on fourth down. The Bills had 233 passing yards, 22 completions on 28 attempts, averaging 7.5 per pass, with no interceptions thrown and 3 sacks taken for 18 yards. The Bengals had 276 yards, 25 completions on 36 pass attempts. They also averaged 7.5 per pass. They would throw 2 interceptions and would take 1 sack for 8 yards. 183 yards on 29 rush attempts for the Bills. That's 6.3 per run. And 62 yards on 19 attempts for the Bengals. 3.3 per rush. Cincinnati finished 3 for 3 in the red zone, while Buffalo was 3 for 5. The Bengals had 4 penalties for 30 yards, 2 turnovers, both off the interceptions, with no defense or special teams touchdowns. The Bills had 6 penalties for 68 yards with 1 turnover, and that was a lost fumble. And they had the pick 6 from Christian Benford as their defensive touchdown. Time of possession was won by the Bills, 31 minutes 48 seconds to 28 minutes and 12 seconds for Cincinnati. The closing line in this game was Buffalo -6, and the over-under was 55. I picked the Bills at -5.5 and the over-under at 53. I took Buffalo to win and to cover, but Cincinnati only lost by 5 points, so they will cover this game. I go to 1-1 straight up and 0-2 ATS. And I projected this game would go under 53 points. The 2 teams combined for 73. So I ended up losing this game, sending me to 1-1 on over-unders. Alright, next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars' home dominance of the Indianapolis Colts continues for another year, as Jacksonville defeats Indianapolis 36-19 as they win their 10th straight home game against the Colts. With the win, Jacksonville jumps into first place in the AFC South with a record of 9-4, while the Colts, now losers of 3 straight, fell to 8-5. Alright, let's go to the player stats for this game. We'll start with Trevor Lawrence, 17 of 30 for 244 yards, averaging 8.1 per completion, with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks taken. He had an 82.6 QBR and a 105.4 QB rating. Nick Mullins was 1 for 1 for 3 yards, with no touchdowns or interceptions. He had a 1.2 QBR and a 79.2 passer rating. So also the Jaguars went 18 for 31 passing for 247 yards, averaging 8 per pass, with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a collective QB rating of 105.2. For the Colts, Daniel Jones did start this game. He was 5 of 7 for 60 yards at 8.6 per completion with no touchdowns and 1 interception. He would take no sacks. He had a 20.4 QBR and a 57.7 QB rating. But his season is now over as he tore his Achilles in the first quarter. And this is a major blow for the Indianapolis Colts. Riley Leonard would play the rest of the game. He went 18 of 29 for 145 yards, averaging 5 per reception. With no touchdowns and 1 interception, he would take 1 sack for 9 yards. He had a 50.4 QBR and a 60.3 QB rating. So collectively, Indianapolis quarterbacks went 23 of 36 for 196 yards at an average of 5.7 per completion, with no touchdowns and 2 interceptions and 1 sack taken for 9 yards. Collective QB rating ended up being 55.9. Looking at rushing for the Jaguars, Travis Etienne Jr., 20 carries, 74 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3.7 average. Trevor Lawrence ran 4 times for 16 yards and a 4 average. As a team, the Jaguars 32 rush attempts for 103 yards at 3.2 per run with 2 touchdowns. For the Colts, Jonathan Taylor, 21 carries, 74 yards and a touchdown, 3.5 average. Riley Leonard, 2 for 5 yards and a touchdown, 2.5 average. That's pretty much it. Indianapolis ran 26 times for 89 yards and a 3.4 average with 2 touchdowns. As for receivers, first for the Jaguars, Brian Thomas Jr., 3 catches, 87 yards on 6 targets, 29 average. Tim Patrick, 5 for 78 on 6 targets and a touchdown, averaging 15.6. Jacoby Myers, 4 for 39 and a touchdown on 10 targets, averaging 9.8. And Britton Strange, 3 for 27 on 6 targets, averaging 9 per catch. Jaguars receivers had 18 receptions total for 247 yards, 13.7 average, with 2 touchdowns on 31 targets. For the Colts, Alec Pierce, 5 catches, 80 yards on 8 targets, averaging 16 per catch. Michael Pittman Jr., 9 for 79 on 12 targets and an 8.8 average. Josh Downs, 4 for 23 on 5 targets, 5.8 average. Tyler Warren, only 2 catches for 15 yards on 6 targets, averaging 7.5. Colts receivers had 23 receptions for 205 yards, 8.9 per reception on 36 targets with no touchdowns. Okay. There was 1 fumble by the Colts. It was from Jonathan Taylor. He would lose that fumble. And there were 2 from the Jaguars, both from Bashul Tootin. He would fumble twice and lose 1 of them. All right, defensively, starting off with the Jaguars, Antonio Johnson and Devin Lloyd each had 8 tackles. Devin Lloyd also with a pass defense and 2 quarterback hits. Foyesade Oluokun, 7 tackles and 2 passes defense. Trayvon Walker, 6 tackles and a tackle for loss. Greg Newsome II with 5 tackles and 2 passes defense. Josh Hines Allen, 5 tackles, a sack, a TFL, and 2 QB hits. Jerrion Jones and Danny Striegel had 4 tackles apiece. Devon Hamilton, 3 tackles and a TFL. Matt Dickerson, 3 tackles. Jack Kaiser had 3 tackles as well. And Dennis Gardeck with 3 tackles and a QB hit. All told, they had 77 tackles with 1 sack, 4 tackles for loss, 9 passes defense, and 5 quarterback hits. On the Colts side, Zaire Franklin led the team with 7 tackles. JT Tuamoloau had 6 tackles and a tackle for loss. Jermaine Pratt, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Nick Cross, 5 tackles, 2 passes defense. Jalen Jones, 4 tackles. Charvarius Ward, 4 tackles and 3 passes defense. Grover Stewart, 4 tackles. Kenny Moore, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Cam Bynum with 3 tackles, a TFL, and a pass defense. Mekhi Blackman, 3 tackles. Samson Ebukam, 3 tackles as well. Also, Chris Wormley and Kwity Paye had 3 tackles. As a team, they had 67 tackles with no sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 8 passes defense, and no quarterback hits. Colts defense had no interceptions. Now on kick returns, Shield Tootin had 3 for 61 yards, long of 23, and an average of 20.3. And LaQuint Allen Jr. had 2 kick returns for 52 yards, averaging 26. So that's a total of 5 kick returns for the Jaguars for 113 yards and a 22.6 average. Longest is 26. For the Colts, Amir Abdullah, 3 kick returns for 64, long of 30, and a 21.3 average. Anthony Gould, 2 for 51, averaging 25.5. His longest was 28. They also have 5 kick returns for 115 yards and a 23 average, long kick return of 30. 1 punt return on each side. Austin Trammell went for 15 yards. Anthony Gould for no gain. Cam Little was 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 48, and 4 for 4 on extra points, with 10 points scored. And Blake Grupe, the former New Orleans Saints kicker, had 2 for 2, went 2 for 2 on field goals with a long of 36 and 1 for 1 on extra points. He would score 7 points. All right. Logan Cook with 3 punts at 137 yards. That's a 45.7 average with 1 inside the 20-yard line. His longest was 50 yards. And Rigoberto Sanchez, 2 punts for 101 yards at 50.5. His longest was 54. All right, jumping over to team stats now. 63 plays for the Colts for 285 yards with 12 total drives and an average of 4.5 yards per play. 63 plays for the Jaguars for 350 yards and 12 total drives, averaging 5.6 per play. All right. Indianapolis with 20 first downs, 12 passing, 5 rushing, and 3 via the penalty. And for Jacksonville, they had 18 first downs, 10 passing, 8 rushing. The Colts were 6 of 11 on third down and 0 for 1 on fourth down, while the Jaguars were 7 of 15 on third down and 1 for 2 on fourth down. All right. Jacksonville had 247 yards passing, 18 completions on 31 attempts. That's 8 yards per pass, with no interceptions thrown or sacks taken. 196 passing yards for Indianapolis, 23 pass attempts for 36, or 23 completions for 36 pass attempts, at 5.3 yards per pass, with 2 interceptions thrown and 1 sack taken for 9 yards. The Jaguars, 103 yards on 32 rushes, that's 3.2 per run. Colts, 89 yards on 26 rushes, that's a 3.4 average. Indianapolis, 2 for 4 in the red zone. Jacksonville, 3 for 5. The Colts had 5 penalties for 45 yards with 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions thrown, and 1 lost fumble, with no defensive or special teams touchdowns. 8 penalties, 64 yards for the Jaguars, 1 turnover, which was the lost fumble, and no defensive or special teams touchdowns. Time of possession was nearly even at 30 minutes 5 seconds for Jacksonville and 29 minutes 55 seconds for Indianapolis. The closing line in this game was Indianapolis minus 2.5, and the over-under is 45. I did take the Jaguars to win and to cover at plus 1.5 for the 47.5 total. I projected the game would go over. There were 55 points scored. So through 3 games, my straight-up record is 2-1. My ATS record is 1-2. And over-under totals are also 2 and 1. Alright. So the next game up, we have the Miami Dolphins, who usually struggle in cold weather, but not on this day, as they went to New York and beat down the Jets 34-10. The Dolphins all of a sudden have won 4 straight and 5 of 6 to move their record to 6-7. See that? 6-7? The Jets, meanwhile, are officially eliminated from the playoffs as they fall to 3-10. Alright. We'll start with the player numbers first up. Tua Tagovailoa didn't have to throw that much in this one, only 13 of 21 for 127 yards, averaging 6 yards per completion, with a touchdown and no interceptions. He would take 1 sack for 8 yards, 19.1 QBR, 94.7 QB rating. Tyrod Taylor started this game just 1 for 4 for 6 yards at 1.5 per reception. No touchdowns, 1 interception. He did not record a QBR or a QB rating, both of which are 0, and he took no sacks. He would get hurt in this game, and Brady Cook would go the rest of the way. He went 14 of 30 for 163 yards at 5.4 per reception, or completion rather. No touchdowns and 2 picks. He was sacked 6 times for 27 yards. With a 6.6 QBR and a 35.8 passer rating. Jets quarterbacks, 15 of 34 total for 142 yards, averaging 5 yards per reception. With no touchdowns and 3 interceptions, they would take 6 sacks for 27 and post a team passer rating of 22.8. Ouch. Alright, looking at rushing numbers, Jalen Wright, 24 for 107 and a touchdown on 4.5 per rush. Devin Achane, 7 carries, 92 yards and a touchdown, 13.1 average. Jalen Waddle, 1 carry, 21 yards. Ollie Gordon II, 5 for 17 and a touchdown and a 3.4 average. They would have 41 rush attempts for 239 yards at 5.8 per rush and 3 touchdowns. Breece Hall had 14 carries for the Jets for 43 yards and a 3.1 average. And Isaiah Davis ran twice for 22 and an 11 average. Only 17 rushes for the Jets for 65 yards. That's 3.8 per run with no touchdowns. On the receiving side, starting with the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle, 5 for 50 yards and a touchdown, 10 average on 7 targets. Greg Dulcich, 3 for 41 yards on 3 targets and a 13.7 average. 1 catch, 13 yards each for Darren Waller and Devin Achane. Waller would be targeted 3 times, Achane once. And Malik Washington, 3 for 10 yards, 3.3 average on 4 targets. 13 total receptions for 127 yards at 9.8 per reception with 1 touchdown on 21 targets. For the Jets, Mason Taylor, 5 for 51 yards on 8 targets and a 10.2 average. John Mechie, 4 for 34 on 8 targets, 8.5 average. Adonai Mitchell, 1 catch, 24 yards on 6 targets. Isaiah Williams, 2 for 24 on 3 targets. That's an average of 12. Jeremy Ruckert, 2 for 19 on 3 targets, 9.5. Andrew Beck, 1 catch for 17 and a target. 15 total receptions for the Jets for 169 yards. That's 11.3 per reception with no touchdowns and 32 targets. All right. 3 fumbles for the Jets, 2 by Brady Cook. 1 was recovered. Malachi Moore also had a fumble. Meanwhile, Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis each recovered a fumble. And for the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa had the 1 fumble. Ollie Gordon would recover 1 as well. Defensively, starting with the Dolphins, Ashton Davis, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Jordan Brooks, 5 tackles and a TFL. KJ Britt, 5 tackles. Zach Sealer, 4 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and a tackle for loss, plus 3 QB hits. Minka Fitzpatrick, 4 tackles, likewise with Jack Jones. Athedo Metafonwu, 3 tackles, a sack, a TFL, and a QB hit. Likewise for Willie Gay Jr., who also had a pass defense. Matthew Judon, 3 tackles. Tyrell Dodson, 3 tackles, 2 TFLs, and a pass defense. Ethan Bonner also with 3 tackles and a pass defense. All told, the Dolphins had 57 tackles, 6 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 9 passes defensed, and 8 quarterback hits. For the Jets, Shamian Sherwood led the team with 15 tackles, with a TFL and 2 passes defensed. Isaiah Oliver, 9 tackles, 2 passes defensed. Malachi Moore, 7 tackles. Quincy Williams, 7 tackles, plus a sack, a TFL, and a QB hit. Kiko Mawigoa, 6 tackles. Juwan Briggs, 5 tackles, a TFL, and a QB hit. Michael Clemens, same thing, 5 tackles, a TFL, and a pass defense, or rather a quarterback hit. Mikal Walker, 4 tackles, a tackle for loss, pass defense as well. Harrison Phillips with 3 tackles and a TFL. Kalen Saunders with 3 tackles for the Jets. All told, they had 77 tackles with 1 sack, 7 tackles for loss, 6 passes defensed, 3 quarterback hits, and they did score a touchdown. All right, no interceptions for the Jets. The Dolphins had 3. 1 from Rasul Douglas, 1 from Tyrell Dodson, and another from Ethan Bonner. All right, on to special teams. D. Eskridge, 2 kick returns for 51, 26 long, 25.5 average. Malik Washington, 1 kick return for 25 yards, so that's 3 total kickoff returns for 76, 25.3 average. And for the Jets, Isaiah Williams, 2 kick returns for 69, that's a 34.5 average, long of 38. Kene Nwangwu, 1 kick return for 33 yards. So they also had 3 kick returns for 102, 34 average, long of 38. All right, Malik Washington with 2 punt returns for 32 yards. That's a 16 average, as long as 17. Isaiah Williams had 3 punt returns for 91, 30.3 average, long of 78, and a touchdown. All right, Riley Patterson, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 53, and 4 for 4 on extra points. He would score 10 of the Dolphins' 34 points rather. Nick Folk, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 31, 1 for 1 on extra points, just a simple 4-point game. Jake Bailey, 6 punts at 259 yards, 43.2 average, 1 inside the 20, long punt of 58. And Austin McNamara, 6 punts for 326 yards at 54.3 per punt, with 2 touchbacks and 2 inside the 20-yard line. He had a long punt of 72. Okay, jumping to team stats now. The Dolphins ran 63 plays on 13 drives for 358 yards, averaging 5.7 yards per play. The Jets ran 57 plays on 12 drives for 207 yards and a 3.6 average. Okay. So we had 23 first downs for Miami, 8 passing, 14 rushing, and 1 on penalties. The Jets had 12, 8 passing, 3 rushing, and 1 on penalties as well. Neither team were good on third down. 2 of 10 for Miami, 1 of 12 for New York. The Jets were also 1 for 2 on fourth down. Passing-wise, 142 yards for the Jets, 15 completions, 34 attempts at 3.6 per pass, with 3 interceptions thrown and 6 sacks taken for 27. And 119 yards for the Dolphins, 13 completions and 21 attempts at a 5.4 average per pass, no interceptions thrown, and only 1 sack taken for 8 yards. Rushing-wise, Miami had 239 yards on 41 attempts. That's 5.8 per run. New York, 65 yards on 17 carries. That's 3.8 per run. Dolphins perfect in the red zone, going 4 for 4. The Jets were 0 for 3. The Dolphins had 5 penalties for 54 yards with no turnovers or defensive or special teams touchdowns. The Jets had 6 penalties for 50 yards, 3 turnovers, all interceptions, and they had the kick return touchdown in this one. Time of possession is 36 minutes, 7 seconds for the Dolphins and 23 minutes, 53 seconds for the Jets. So Miami ends up in ball hawk territory. If you don't know what a ball hawk is, or if you're new to the channel, a ball hawk is a team that possesses the ball for at least 35 minutes, win or lose. Alright, the closing line in this one was Miami minus 2.5, and the over-under was 41.5. I picked New York at plus 3 and 40.5. I also took the Jets to win outright, but that ends up being a disaster as I go 1 and 3 in my straight up pick, or 1 and 3 in my ATS picks. I'm now 2 and 2 straight up, and I projected this game would go under 40.5 when I wrote these down on Wednesday. So I'm going to lose this one. Sorry. Over-under totals are now 2 and 2. Okay, I've only done 4 games and we're 53 minutes in, so let's say we pick this up, shall we? Alright. So let's go to the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tyler Shuck looked really good as the Saints upset the Bucs at Raymond James 24-20. At 7 and 6, Tampa Bay falls into a first-place tie with the idle Carolina Panthers in the NFC South. The Saints only win for the 3rd time this year. They are now 3 and 10. All right, we'll start with player numbers first up. Starting with the Saints, Tyler Shuck again played pretty well. I wouldn't say very well though. 13 of 20 for 144 yards. That's 7.2 per completion. No touchdowns, 1 interception. He would take 3 sacks for 23 yards. He had a 75 QBR and a 65.4 QB rating. Baker Mayfield was 14 of 30 for 122 yards at 4.1 per completion, with 1 touchdown and 1 interception with no sacks taken. He had a 44.6 QBR and a 55.1 QB rating. All right, rushing numbers. Devin Neal, 19 carries, 70 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 3.7 average. And Tyler Shuck ran 7 times, 55 yards, and a 7.9 average, plus 2 rushing touchdowns. The Saints would run for 32 times for 139 yards and a 4.3 average, again with 3 touchdowns. Bucky Irving, 15 carries, 55 yards for the Bucs. That's a 3.7 average. Rashad White, 11 for 53, 4.8 average. Baker Mayfield, 6 for 42, averaging 7. And Sean Tucker, 7 for 29, averaging 4.1 plus a touchdown. So that comes out to 39 rush attempts for 179 yards, 4.6 average, and a score. Jumping to the receivers, Stephon Vele, 3 catches, 40 yards on 5 targets for the Saints, averaging 13.3. Jawan Johnson, 4 for 38 on 4 targets, 9.5 average. Chris Olave, 3 for 30 yards, 5 targets, and a 10 average. 13 total receptions for 144 yards for New Orleans, averaging 11.1 with no touchdowns. And Saints receivers had 20 targets in this game. For Tampa, Chris Godwin, 5 for 55 yards, 8 targets, averaging 11 per catch. Bucky Irving, 2 for 26 and a touchdown on 3 targets. That's a 13 average, which led the team. Cade Otton, 3 for 19 on 4 targets and a 6.3 average. And Emeka Egbuka, 2 for 15 on 9 targets and a 7.5 average. 14 total receptions for the Tampa Bay Bucks for 122 yards, 8.7 per reception, with 1 touchdown on 28 targets. Each team had a fumble, one by Taysom Hill, he would recover, the other by Tampa Bay's Cameron Johnson, who also would recover. Defensively, we'll start with the Saints. Kool-Aid McKinstry and Demario Davis each had 7 tackles. Kool-Aid also added a pass defense. Jordan Howden, 6 tackles. Carl Granderson, 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass defense. Nathan Shepard, 5 tackles, 2 quarterback hits. Chris Rump II, 4 tackles. Danny Stutzman, 4 tackles. Devin Gottschall, 4 tackles, and a tackle for loss. And he had 3 tackles apiece for Pete Werner, Quincy Riley, and Jonas Sanker. Pete Werner also had a pass defense. Overall, the Saints had 67 tackles with no sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 7 passes defensed, 2 quarterback hits. On the Bucs side, Christian Eisen, 8 tackles, a tackle for loss as well. Antoine Winfield Jr., 5 tackles plus a pass defense. Vita Vea, 5 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. Levante David, 5 tackles. Jamil Dean, 4 tackles. Jacob Parrish, also with 4 tackles. Greg Gaines, 3 tackles. Greg Gaines and Chris Braswell each had 3 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 QB hit. And Tyke Smith had 3 tackles. The Bucs defense had a total of 58 tackles, with 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 4 passes defense, and 4 quarterback hits. Okay, each team had an interception. Alante Taylor had the 1 pick for the Saints for 10 yards. Zion McCullen had 1 for the Bucs for 19. On the special teams, starting with the Saints, Dante Pettis, 4 kick returns for 84 yards, long of 23, average of 21. Mason Tipton, 1 kick return for 54, 5 total kick returns for 138 at a 27.6 average. Long kick return was 54. And for the Bucs, only 2 kick returns for Cameron Johnson, for 39 yards at a 19.5 average. His long return is 23. All right, no punt returns for the Saints, but the Bucs had both for Cameron Johnson with no yards. Chris Smythe, 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 30, and 3 for 3 on extra points. He would score 6 points. And Chase McLaughlin, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 41, and 2 for 2 on PATs. He would have 8 points. Kai Kroger with 3 punts at 152 yards, average of 50.7 with 1 touchback. His long punt was 54. And Riley Dixon, 1 punt for 31 yards, which landed inside the 20-yard line. And obviously that 31 is his longest. Team numbers. All right. Tampa Bay had 69 plays for 301 yards on 11 drives, averaging just 4.4 per play. New Orleans ran 55 plays for 260 on 11 drives and a 4.7 average yards per play. All right, 16 first downs for the Saints, 9 passing, 7 rushing, 19 first downs for the Buccaneers, 4 of them passing, 11 rushing, and 4 via the penalty. Third downs and fourth downs, 5 of 11 on third down for the Saints, 0 for 1 on fourth. 3 of 13 for the Bucs on third down and 2 for 7 on fourth down. Okay, passing numbers. 122 yards for the Buccaneers, 14 completions, 30 attempts, 4.1 yards per pass, 1 interception, and no sacks taken. And 121 yards for the Saints, 13 completions, 20 pass attempts, 5.3 yards per pass, 1 interception, and 3 sacks taken for 20. All right, the Bucs ran 39 times for 179 yards, 4.6 per rush. Saints 139 yards, 32 rush attempts, and a 4.3 yards per rush. New Orleans was 2 for 3 in the red zone, while Tampa was 1 for 2. The Saints had 10 penalties, 82 yards. Their one turnover was the interception, with no defense or special team scores. And the Bucs had 7 penalties for 49 yards, and their lone turnover, also an interception, with no defensive or special team scores. Time of possession is won by Tampa Bay, 32 minutes, 12 seconds versus 27 minutes, 48 seconds for the Saints. Closing line was Tampa Bay minus 7.5, and the over-under was 41.5. With the points, I took the Saints at +9 and 42.5. So overall, I took Tampa Bay to win, but New Orleans to cover. So I lost the straight-up pick. My record goes to 2-3. My record is also 2-3 ATS after taking the Saints with the points. Over-under totals are now 3-2, as I projected this game would go over 42.5 points. There were 44. So that's the Saints and the Bucs. And if you're just joining me, you're watching the week that was, as we're looking at the team and player statistical numbers from week 14 in the NFL. Keep it locked right here, as I'll have my week 15 power rankings and the updated playoff picture coming up. All right, so the next game we'll look at is the battle for the AFC North, as the Pittsburgh Steelers go into Baltimore and take down the Ravens 27-22. So the Steelers now have first place in the division all to themselves with a record of 7-6. The Ravens, meanwhile, dropped to 6-7. All right, we'll start with player numbers. First up, Aaron Rodgers for the Steelers was 23 of 34 for 284 yards, 8.4 average per completion, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and no sacks taken, 62.6 QBR, and a QB rating of 103.1. Lamar Jackson, 19 of 35 for 219 yards at 6.3 per completion, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 2 sacks taken for 16, 71.2 QBR, and a 71 passer rating. Rushing-wise, Kenneth Gainwell, only 4 carries, 15 yards, and a touchdown. That's a 3.8 average. And Jaylen Warren, 8 carries, 13 yards, and a 1.6 average. Only 17 rush attempts for the Steelers for 34 yards. That's 2 per run and 2 touchdowns, as Aaron Rodgers also had a rushing score. On the Ravens side, Derrick Henry, 25 carries, 94 yards, 3.8 average. Keaton Mitchell, 6 for 76, 12.7 average. Lamar, 7 for 43 and a touchdown, 6.1 average. 40 rush attempts for the Ravens for 217, 5.4 average with 1 touchdown. On to the receivers, starting with Pittsburgh. BK Metcalf, 7 for 148 on 12 targets and a 21.1 average. Jaylen Warren, 3 for 49 and a touchdown, 16.3 average on 3 targets. Calvin Austin, 1 catch, 2 targets, 31 yards. Kenneth Gainwell, 6 for 27 on 7 targets, a 4.5 average. All told, the Steelers had 23 receptions for 284 yards, 12.3 per reception, with 1 touchdown. And for the Ravens, Zay Flowers had 8 catches for 124 yards on 11 targets at 15.5 per catch. Isaiah Likely, 4 for 25 and a touchdown on 6 targets, 6.3 average. Rashad Bateman, 2 for 23 on 3 targets and 11.5 average. 19 receptions for the Ravens for 219, 11.5 average with 1 touchdown. All right, no fumbles by either team in this game. We'll start defensively with the Steelers. Cole Holcomb led the team with 9 tackles. Alex Highsmith with 7 tackles, all solo, with 1 sack and 3 tackles for loss, plus 2 quarterback hits. Patrick Queen, back in Baltimore, facing his former team again, had 7 tackles. TJ Watt, 6 tackles and a tackle for loss, plus a QB hit. Peyton Wilson, 6 tackles. James Pierre and Cam Hayward each with 5 tackles. James Pierre also with 2 passes defensed. Meanwhile, Joey Porter Jr. and Keanu Benton each had 4 tackles and a pass defensed. And Jabril Peppers had 4 tackles. For the Ravens, Roquan Smith, 10 tackles and a tackle for loss. Alohi Gilman, 7 tackles. Nate Wiggins, 6 tackles. Malachi Starks with 4 tackles and a pass defense. Marlon Humphrey, 4 tackles and 3 passes defensed. Mike Green, 4 tackles and a TFL. Teddy Buchanan also with 4 tackles and a TFL. And Kyle Hamilton with 3 tackles for the Ravens. All right, so also the Steelers had 80 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 5 passes defensed, and 5 quarterback hits. The Ravens had 58 tackles, no sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 5 passes defensed, and 1 quarterback hit. Okay, the only interception in the game came from James Pierre of the Steelers for 9 yards. All right, 4 kick returns for the Steelers for 88 yards, long of 27 and an average of 22. Kenneth Gainwell had 3 of them for 69 yards and a 23 average. Jaylen Warren had the other for 19. 5 kick returns for the Ravens for 117. 3 from Keaton Mitchell for 72 and a 24 average. The other 2 coming from Rashaan Ali for 45 yards and a 22.5 average. So also, that's an average of 22 yards on kick returns for the Steelers and 23.4 for the Ravens. 2 punt returns for Calvin Austin for 12 yards, long of 9. 3 for LaJohntay Wester for 14 yards and a 4.7 average, long of 10. Chris Boswell, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 28, 3 for 3 on extra points. He would score 9 points in this game. Tyler Loop, 3 for 3 on field goals, long of 36, 1 for 2 on extra points. He would score 10 in this game. Corliss Waitman had 4 punts, averaging 197 yards. That's an average of 49.3 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. His long punt was 53 yards. Jordan Stout, 2 punts at 102 yards, averaging 51. His long punt would be 54. Okay. The Ravens ran 77 plays for 420 yards on 10 drives, averaging 5.5 yards per play. The Steelers would run 51 plays for 318, 10 drives, and an average of 6.2. 22 first downs for Baltimore, 9 passing, 10 rushing, and 3 from penalties. And 13 first downs for the Steelers, 7 passing, 4 rushing, and 2 from penalties. Pittsburgh finished 6 of 14 on 3rd down, 1 for 1 on 4th down. Baltimore 7 of 18 on 3rd down and 3 for 4 on 4th down. Passing wise, the Steelers had 284 yards, 23 completions, 34 attempts at 8.4 per pass. no interceptions thrown or sacks taken. The Ravens had 203 passing yards, 19 completions, 35 attempts at 5.5 per pass, with 1 interception thrown and 2 sacks taken for 16. Baltimore ran 40 times for 217 yards, that's 5.4 yards per rush. 17 carries, 34 yards for the Steelers, only 2 yards per rush. Pittsburgh finished 2 of 4 in the red zone, Baltimore 2 of 6. The Steelers, 7 penalties, 33 yards with no turnovers or no touchdowns on defense and special teams. 5 penalties, 39 yards for the Ravens. Their 1 turnover was an interception, and they also had no defensive or special team scores. Baltimore does win time of possession, 33 minutes, 44 seconds. The Steelers, 26 minutes and 16 seconds. Closing line was Baltimore minus 5.5. Over under was 44. My pick was the Steelers plus 6 and 42.5. I took Baltimore to win, Pittsburgh to cover. They lose by 5. So they technically don't get. They lose by 5. So that's 3-3 ATS, 2-4 straight up. Over under totals are also 3-3, as I projected this game would go under 42.5 points. There were 49 scored. Alright. So that's Steelers Ravens. Now we're moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, who were tied 9-9 at halftime, but then went on to blow away the Atlanta Falcons in the second half, winning 37-9. At 10-3, the Seahawks keep pace in the NFC West, while the Atlanta Falcons are officially eliminated from playoff contention with a record of 4-9. All right, we'll start with player statistics first. All right, starting with the quarterbacks. Sam Darnold for the Seahawks was 20 of 30 for 249 yards. That's an 8.3 average with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. He had a 64.4 QBR and a 111.7 QB rating. Kirk Cousins, 15 of 30, 162 yards, 5.4 per completion. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 sack taken for 18. He had an 18.2 QBR and a passer rating of 38.5. By the way, Sam Darnold would take 2 sacks in this game for 13. Looking at rushing, Zach Charbonnet, 7 for 46 yards and an average of 6.6. Velus Jones Jr., 4 for 32, 8 average, and Kenneth Walker, 10 for 29 yards and a 2.9 average. Crazy Cajuns in the house. Let's pop in. All right, the Seahawks ran the ball 26 times for 129 yards, 5 yards per tote, with no touchdowns. No touchdowns. And on the Falcons side, Bijan Robinson, 20 carries, 86 yards, 4.3 average. Tyler Algier, 11 carries, 34 yards, and a 3.1 average. All told, 31 rushes for the Falcons for 120 and a 3.9 average. On the receiving side of things for Seattle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, also known as JSN. 7 receptions, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns on 10 targets, 13.1 average. Rashid Shaheed, 4 for 67 on 5 targets and a 16.8 average. Cooper Kupp, 2 for 35 and a touchdown on 3 targets. That's an average of 17.5. A.J. Barner, 3 for 27 on 4 targets, 9 average. And Zach Charbonnet, 2 for 20 on 3 targets, an average of 10. 20 total receptions for the Seahawks for 249, 12.5 average, 3 touchdowns, and 30 targets. For the Falcons, Kyle Pitts, 6 for 90 yards, 10 targets, 15 average. Tyler Algier, 2 for 33 on 2 targets, 16.5 average. And Dylan Drummond, 3 for 21 on 5 targets, averaging 7. 15 total receptions for the Falcons for 162 yards. That's an average of 10.8 with no touchdowns and 28 targets. 2 fumbles by the Seahawks, one by Drew Lock, the other by JSN. Lock would recover his own fumble. Devin Witherspoon would also recover a fumble for Seattle. And then the one Falcons fumble came from Bijan Robinson, which he would lose and again be recovered by Devin Witherspoon. Defensively, Ernest Jones led the team with 11 tackles. Nick Ebenwari had 6 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, a pass defense, and a quarterback hit. Devin Witherspoon had 7 tackles, 2 passes defense, then a quarterback hit. Reek Woolen 5 tackles, 2 passes defense, and a quarterback hit. And Drake Thomas with 5 tackles. So in total, the Seahawks had 70 tackles, 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, 10 passes defense, 7 quarterback hits, and they did score a touchdown on special teams, which we'll get into shortly. All right, the Falcons were led by A.J. Terrell. He had 8 tackles, 1 TFL, and a pass defense. Mike Hughes with 6 tackles, a TFL, and a pass defense. Divine Diablo, 6 tackles and a TFL. Caden Ellis and Laquel London, each with 6 tackles, and D. Alford with 5. Overall, the Falcons defense with 63 tackles, 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 3 passes defense, and 3 quarterback hits. All right, 2 interceptions by the Seahawks defense, one from Devin Witherspoon for 3 yards and the other from Nick Ebenwari. 1 interception for the Falcons defense, courtesy of Mike Hughes for 6 yards. All right. 3 kick returns for the Seahawks, all from Rashid Shaheed for 148 yards, 49.3 average, including that 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown to start the second half. And 4 kick returns for Devin Tompkins for 121, 30.3 average, and his long kick return was 47. No punt returns for the Seahawks, with the Falcons had 1 from Jamal Agnew for 14 yards. Joseph Myers, 3 for 3 on field goals, long of 48, and 4 for 4 on extra points. He would score 12 points for the Seahawks. Zane Gonzalez would score 10 points. He went 3 for 4 on field goals, and his long is 43, and no extra points. Michael Dixon with 3 punts at 148 yards, averaging 49.3, 2 inside the 20-yard line, long punt of 52. Bradley Pinion, 2 punts, 84 yards, 42 average, 2 inside the 20-yard line, and a long punt of 45. All right, looking at team numbers. All right. The Seahawks ran 58 plays for 365 yards, 11 drives, averaging 6.3 per play. The Falcons, 62 plays for 274, 11 drives, 4.4 per play. 20 first downs for the Seahawks, 11 through the air, 6 on the ground, and 3 on penalties. 15 first downs for the Falcons, 6 passing and rushing, and 3 on penalties. Seahawks went 6 of 13 on third down, while the Falcons were bad. 1 for 13 on third down, 1 for 2 on fourth down. Passing yards, 236 for the Seahawks, 20 completions, 30 attempts, 7.4 average, 1 interception, and 2 sacks taken for 13 yards. 154 yards for the Falcons, 15 of 30 completions and attempts, 5 yards per pass, 2 interceptions thrown, 1 sack taken for 8. The Seahawks ran 26 times for 129 yards. That's 5 yards per rush. Atlanta, 120 yards on 31 attempts, 3.9 per rush. Oh, I don't know. It's probably going to be next year for sure. Definitely next year. All right, the Seahawks, 2 of 4 in the red zone. The Falcons, 0 for 4. 6 penalties, 60 yards for Seattle. 1 turnover, that was the interception. And then, of course, that special teams touchdown, that 100-yard kick return. 8 penalties, 56 yards for the Falcons. 3 turnovers, including 2 interceptions and 1 lost fumble, and no special teams or defensive scores. Seattle wins the time of possession, 31 minutes, 20 seconds, while the Falcons are at 28 minutes and 40 seconds. Closing line is Seattle minus 6.5, over under 45. I did pick the Seahawks at minus 7 and 44.5. I also took them to win outright. And I got all 3 of these picks correct as I go to 3 and 4 straight up and 4 and 3 ATS. 4 and 3 on over under totals as I projected over 44.5 points. Barely got this one at 46. And there's your rundown of Seahawks Falcons. Now we're going to go to the Titans and the Browns. This was supposed to be the toilet bowl, but both teams look pretty good, especially the Titans as they beat the Browns 31-29. Tennessee wins just its second game of the season and moves to 2-11, and in the process eliminates Cleveland from the playoffs at 3-10. All right, let's start with player numbers. Starting off with the Titans, Cam Ward, ho-hum, 14 of 28, 117 yards, just 4.2 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, 1 sack taken for 9 yards, 19 QBR, and a passer rating of 70.1. Shedeur Sanders, 23 of 42, 364 yards, 8.7 per completion, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, 2 sacks taken for 13. He had a 56 QBR and a passer rating of 97.7. Looking at rushing numbers, Tony Pollard, workhorse, 25 carries, 161 and 2 touchdowns, 6.4 average. The 161 rush yards are a career best for Tony Pollard. They had 35 combined rushes for 184 yards, 5.3 per run, and 2 touchdowns, again, both by Pollard. For the Browns, Shedeur Sanders, 3 carries, 29 yards, rushing touchdown, 9.7 average. And Quinshon Judkins, 14 carries, 26 yards, and a 1.9 average. 20 total runs for the Browns for 61 yards. That's 3.1 per rush and a touchdown. On the receiving side, Tajay Spears, only 2 catches, 28 yards, 14 average on 4 targets. Chamir DK, 5 for 24 and a touchdown, 8 targets, 4.8 average. Chig Okonkwo, 2 for 20 on 2 targets, 10 average. Van Jefferson, 2 for 17 on 4 targets, 8.5 average. Alec Ayomanor, 1 for 14 and a touchdown, 3 targets, 14 average. 14 total completions for the Titans were 117, 8.4 per reception, and 2 touchdowns on 25 targets. And for the Browns, Harold Fanning Jr., 8 catches, 114 and a touchdown, 11 targets, 14.3 average. Jerry Jeudy, 3 for 76 and a touchdown, 25.3 average, and 5 targets. Dylan Sampson, 5 for 64, 6 targets, and a 12.8 average. Overall, 23 receptions for 364 yards, that's 15.8 per catch, and 3 touchdowns on 38 targets. All right, as for fumbles, Cedric Gray recovered a fumble. Meanwhile, Cleveland had 2 fumbles and lost 1, recovered the other. The fumbles were committed by Dylan Sampson and Gage Laveridan. All right, jumping to the defense. Cedric Gray led the Titans with 10 tackles and a quarterback hit. Jeffrey Simmons, 7 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, pass defense, and 3 quarterback hits. Amani Hooker, 6 tackles. Kevin Winston Jr., 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. couple pass defenses, and 2 quarterback hits. 5 tackles for Cody Barton with 3 passes defensed. Marcus Harris, 4 tackles. And Jihad Ward, 4 tackles and 4 QB hits. That's 64 tackles total for Tennessee. 2 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 9 passes defensed, and 14 quarterback hits. That's a lot. Okay, Carson Schlesinger led the Browns with 13 tackles and a pass defensed. Devin Bush, 9 tackles, 2 passes defensed. Grant Delpit, 5 tackles and a QB hit. Myles Garrett, 4 tackles, a sack, and 3 tackles for loss, plus a pass defensed and 2 quarterback hits. The Browns defense had 70 tackles, 1 sack, 7 tackles for loss, 5 passes defensed, and 5 quarterback hits. All right, each team had an interception. Tennessee had one from Xavier Woods, which he would return for 35 yards. Cleveland's interception came from Devin Bush for 44 yards. Now it's the special teams. 1 kick return for Jamiri DK for 41 yards. 5 kick returns for the Browns from Jerome Ford at 113 yards and a 22.6 average. Long return of 32. 1 punt return for Jamir DK for -2 yards. And for Gage Laveridan, 4 punt returns for 16 with a long return of 9. Joey Sly, 1 for 1 on field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. Long field goal of 41. He would score 7 points. Andre Smite, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 38, and 2 for 2 on extra points. That's a total of 5 points. And for the punters, Johnny Hecker with 8 punts, 383 yards, 47.9 average, 2 inside the 20-yard line and 2 touchbacks, long punt of 54. Corey Bojorquez, 6 punts, 222 yards, 37 average, 1 inside the 20-yard line, and a long punt of 42 yards. Okay, looking at total offense. 64 plays, 412 yards for Cleveland, 15 drives, and a 6.4 average. 64 plays for Tennessee for 292, 15 plays, 4.6 average. All right, 22 first downs for the Browns, 13 passing, 5 rush, and 4 from penalties. And for Tennessee, 13 first downs, 6 passing, and 7 rushing. Tennessee finished 6 of 17 on 3rd down. Cleveland 6 of 14. Neither team had a 4th down attempt. How about 351 yards passing for the Browns? 23 completions, 42 attempts, 8 yards per pass, 1 interception, and 2 sacks taken for 13 yards. Only 108 yards for the Titans. 14 completions on 28 attempts, 3.7 per pass, 1 interception, and 1 sack taken for 9. The Titans ran 35 times for 184 yards at 5.3 per pop. Cleveland held to 61 yards on 20 rushes and a 3.1 average. Both teams were perfect in the red zone, 2 for 2 for the Titans, 3 for 3 for the Browns. 11 penalties, 85 yards for the Titans with 1 interception. That's their only turnover. 7 penalties, 50 yards for the Browns, 2 turnovers, 1 fumble lost, and 1 interception. Neither team scored a touchdown on defense or special teams. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 56 seconds for the Titans, 28 minutes, 4 seconds for the Browns. Closing line was Cleveland -3.5, and the over-under was 33. I did take the Browns at -4 and 34. I took them to win straight up as well. Probably my worst picks of the week. 3 and 5 straight up down, 4 and 4 ATS. And over-unders are also 4 and 4, as I projected that this game would stay under 34 points. They ended up scoring 60. So that was a bad one. Rounding out the 1 o'clock games on Sunday, you've got the Minnesota Vikings, who were shut out in Seattle in Week 13. This week, they return home and pitch a shutout against the Washington Commanders, 31-0. At 5-8, Minnesota is still mathematically alive for the playoffs. Can't say the same for the Washington Commanders. After making the NFC Championship game last season, they are now out of postseason consideration with a record of 3-10. All right, let's look at quarterbacks for these teams. We'll begin with J.J. McCarthy, 16 of 23, 163 yards, 7.1 per completion, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He did take 4 sacks for 12 yards, though. He had a 75.1 QBR and a passer rating of 129.2. Okay, Jaden Daniels went 9 for 20 for 78 yards, 3.9 yards per completion, no touchdowns, 1 interception, only 1 sack taken for a yard. He had an 11.1 QB rating and a 35 passer rating. Marcus Mariota went 2 for 4 for 30 yards, averaging 7.5 with no touchdowns and 1 interception. 1 sack taken for 8. No QBR, but a passer rating of 35.4. Collectively, the Commanders were 11 for 24 for 99 yards. Ouch. That's a 4.5 average per completion, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2 sacks taken for 9 yards, and a collective QB rating of 24.3. Looking at rushing, Aaron Jones Sr., 14 carries, 76 yards, 5.4 average. And Jordan Mason, 11 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 4.7. The Vikings ran the ball 34 times for 162. That's an average of 4.8 per rush, and a touchdown. For the Commanders, Chris Rodriguez Jr., 10 for 52, 5.2 average. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, 7 for 32, 4.6 average. And Jaden Daniels, 4 rushes, 16 yards, averaging 4. As a team, they had 23 rushes for 107 and a 4.7 average. On to receivers, starting with the Vikings. Jordan Addison, 4 for 62, 7 targets, 15.5 average. Jalen Naylor, 3 for 30 yards, 3 targets, 10 average. Josh Oliver, 2 for 24, 2 targets, 12 average. TJ Hawkinson, 2 for 12, 3 targets, 6 average, and a touchdown. Oh, Josh Oliver, both of his catches were touchdowns, by the way. And Justin Jefferson, pretty much a non-factor here, 2 for 11 on 4 targets and a 5.5 average. 16 receptions for the Vikings for 163. That's 10.2 per reception with 3 touchdowns on 23 targets. 11 receptions, 108 yards for the Commanders at 9.8 per reception with no touchdowns and 20 targets. All right, 1 fumble in this game was from Marcus Mariota of the Commanders. He would lose this fumble and it would be recovered by Javon Hargrave of Minnesota. All right, looking at the defense, Blake Cashman led the team with 10 tackles. Jalen Redmond, 6 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Eric Wilson, 6 tackles, a sack, tackle for loss, plus a quarterback hit. And then 4 tackles each for Andrew Van Ginkel, who also had 2 passes defensed, and Joshua Metellus. And then for the Commanders, Bobby Wagner had a game-high 16 tackles. He had 1 sack and a quarterback hit. Quan Martin, 7 tackles. Mike Sinristel, 6 tackles, TFL, and a pass defense. Von Miller, 4 tackles, a sack, and a TFL, plus a quarterback hit. And Jacob Martin, 4 tackles, plus a quarterback hit. 70 tackles for the Commanders, 4 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 5 passes defense, and 6 quarterback hits. 60 tackles for the Vikings. 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 4 passes defense, and 3 quarterback hits. No interceptions recorded by the Commanders' defense. They were both by the Vikings, one from Andrew Van Ginkel for 40 yards, the other from Harrison Smith for 11. On special teams, kick returns, Mike Price had 1 for 35 yards. Deebo Samuel had 4 for 87 at 21.8 per return. 25 was his longest. Okay, there were no punt returns for the Commanders. There were 2 for the Vikings from Miles Price for just 8 yards. No extra points or field goals from Washington. But for Minnesota, Will Reichert was 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 45, and 4 for 4 on extra points, giving them 7 points. Okay, on punts, Tressway had 3 for 140 yards, 46.7 average, 1 inside the 20, and the longest is 49. And for Ryan Wright, 1 punt for 43 yards. All right. Sorry this is taking so long. I'm still on the early games, believe it or not. But I got, 5 more? So we're almost done. Okay. The Vikings ran 61 plays for 313 yards with 8 total drives, averaging 5.1 yards per play. The Commanders ran 49 plays for 206, 7 total drives, 4.2 yards per play. 25 first downs for the Vikings, 13 passing, 10 rushing, and 2 via penalties. 12 first downs for the Commanders, 6 passing, 4 rushing, and 2 via the penalty. Washington was 3 of 10 on third down, 1 for 3 on fourth down. Minnesota, 6 of 11 on third down, 2 for 2 on fourth down. Passing yards, 151 for the Vikings, 16 completions, 23 attempts, 5.6 yards per pass, no interceptions, but they did take 4 sacks for 12 yards. 99 yards for the Commanders, 11 completions on 24 attempts. That's 3.8 yards per pass, 2 interceptions, and 2 sacks taken for 9 yards. All right, the Vikings, 34 rushes, 162 yards at 4.8 per rush. And the Commanders, 107 yards on 23 rushes at 4.7 per rush. Yes, yeah, I used to have the Sports Alerts app on my Chromebook, but when I did an update Saturday night, it erased all my apps. And I'm having a hell of a time trying to get them back. I even went on the Play Store website and couldn't get them. So, yeah. It's been a rough couple of days with that. All right, Washington, 0 for 2 in the red zone, 4 for 4 for Minnesota. 4 penalties, 34 yards for the Commanders. They would turn the ball over 3 times with 2 interceptions and 1 lost fumble. And 3 penalties for 24 yards for the Vikings with no turnovers. And neither team scored a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown. 34 minutes, 52 seconds time of possession for the Minnesota Vikings, and 25 minutes, 8 seconds for the Commanders. The closing line in this one was Minnesota -1, and the over-under was 44. I did pick Washington on Wednesday when I wrote these numbers down at +1.5 and 42. And I did take the Commanders to win and to cover. And this is probably my worst pick of the week by far, as I dropped to 4-5 ATS, 3-6 straight up. But over-unders are still my friend. I'm now 5-4 after taking the under 42 in this game. And Anna's in the house. How's it going, Anna? All right. It took me 1 hour 39 minutes to get through Thursday night football and the early games. Now it's time to jump to the late games. And there was a pretty weird ending in Las Vegas as we start off these 4 o'clock matchups, as the Denver Broncos defeated the Las Vegas Raiders 24-17. I didn't see the controversy at the end of the game, I didn't hear much about it, but they're saying there is some controversy. If anyone can fill me in, that would be very appreciated. Anyway, the Broncos are 11-2, as they'll now take over the top spot in the AFC from the Patriots, who are also 11-2 and didn't play this week. Meanwhile, the Raiders dropped to 2-11. They are tied with the Titans and the Giants for the worst record in the NFL. Okay, let's start with the quarterbacks for both teams, starting off with the Broncos. Good game for Bo Nix. 31-38, 212 yards. That's 5.6 yards per completion. No touchdowns or interceptions. He would take 3 sacks for 8. 75.9 passer rating of 89.9. And Geno Smith for the Raiders, 13-21, 116 yards, 5.5 per reception, or completion rather. 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 3 sacks taken for 19. His QBR was 54. Quarterback rating is 92.6. And then Kenny Pickett would come in. He went 8 of 11 for 97 at 8.8 per completion. 1 touchdown, no interceptions. 1 sack taken for 5. 16.7 QBR. 129.7 passer rating. As far as Raiders quarterbacks, they were collectively 21 of 32 for 189 yards. 6.7 per completion, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They would take 4 sacks for 24 yards and have a final QB rating combined of 105.3. All right, on the ground, RJ Harvey paced the Broncos, 17 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown, 4.4 per run. Adam Prentice, 2 for 22, 11 average. And Jaleel McLaughlin, 4 for 22 and a 5.5 average. 31 total rushes for the Broncos for 152. That's a 4.9 average and 2 touchdowns, as Bo Nix also scored 1. And not much to talk about with the Raiders. Ashton Jeanty was held to 10 carries, 30 yards, and an average of 3. 12 total rushes for Las Vegas for 40 yards and a 3.3 average. So again, not much to say there. On the receiving side, first for the Broncos, Courtland Sutton led the way. 6 catches, 62 yards, 10.3 average on 10 targets. Pat Bryant, 4 for 32 on 4 targets, as an average of 8. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 3 for 27 yards, 3 targets, and an average of 9. And RJ Harvey, 6 receptions, 25 yards, 6 targets, 4.2 average. 31 total receptions for the Broncos for 212 yards, averaging 6.8 per catch. But no touchdowns and 36 targets. So that pretty much tells you that Bo Nix was very accurate in this game. And for the Raiders, Jack Beck, 6 catches, 50 yards, 6 targets, 8 average. By the way, Beck is spelled B-E-C-H. I probably pronounced it wrong. Brock Bowers, 4 for 46 and a touchdown on 5 targets. That's an 11.5 average. Tyler Lockett, 3 for 41, 4 targets, 13.7 average. And 21 total receptions for the Raiders for 213, 10.1 average, and 2 touchdowns on 28 targets. Okay, there were no fumbles by either team, I'm happy to report here. We'll go to the defenses. Leading tacklers for the Broncos include Alex Singleton with 8 tackles, Talanoa Hufanga with 5 tackles, Riley Moss also with 5 tackles, Andre Greenlaw with 4 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. Nick Bonito, I'm giving him the nod as my defensive player of the week. He went 3 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, and 2 quarterback hits. And for the Raiders, Devin White, 19 tackles, and I think that led the league this week, those 19 tackles. Jeremy Chin had 11 tackles and a sack plus 2 quarterback hits. Eric Stokes, 9 tackles. Darian Porter, 6 tackles and 2 passes defensed. And 5 tackles apiece from Isaiah Polamau, Landon Roberts, and Jonah Lealu. All right, the Broncos defense have 49 tackles, 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 1 pass defense, 7 quarterback hits, and they did score a touchdown. I think it was on special teams. We'll find out soon enough. The Raiders had 84 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 2 passes defensed, and 6 quarterback hits. Okay, neither defense recorded an interception, so we'll go straight to the special teams. Marvin Mims Jr., 2 kickoff returns for 39 yards, long of 24, and an average of 19.5. Raheem Mostert, 2 punts or 2 kick returns for 55, 27.5 average, long of 29. Dylan Lobby, one kick return for 29 yards, so that's 3 total for 84 and an average of 28. Okay, only 1 punt return in the game, and it was from the Broncos, from Marvin Mims Jr. for 48 yards and a touchdown. And no punt returns for the Raiders. Okay, Will Lutz, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 23, 3 for 3 on extra points. He would score 6 of the 24 Bronco points. Dale Carlson, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 46, 2 for 2 on extra points. He would score 5 of the 17 Raiders points. Jeremy Crawshaw, just 1 punt for 35 yards, which went inside the 20-yard line. A.J. Cole had 3 punts at 143 yards, 47.7 average, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. His longest punt was 58 yards. All right, let's look at team numbers now. All right. The Broncos ran 72 plays for 356 yards, 7 total drives, and an average of 4.9 yards per play. 48 plays for the Raiders for 229 on 8 drives. That's an average of 4.8 per play. 27 first downs for the Broncos, 14 passing, 11 rushing, and 2 via penalties. 16 for the Raiders, 11 passing, 3 rushing, and also 2 via the penalty. Denver finished 7 of 12 on 3rd down and 1 for 3 on 4th down. The Raiders were 3 for 9 on 3rd down, and they were also 1 for 3 on 4th down. Passing yards, 204 for the Broncos, 31 completions, 38 attempts at 5 yards per pass. No interceptions thrown and 3 sacks taken for 8 yards. 189 yards for the Raiders, 21 completions, 32 attempts, 5.3 yards per pass. No interceptions thrown and 4 sacks taken for 24 yards. Denver ran the ball 31 times for 152 at 4.9 per rush, while Vegas ran only 12 times for 40 yards and an average of 3.3 per rush. The Broncos finished 2 for 3 in the red zone, 1 for 2 for the Raiders. 8 penalties for 50 yards for the Broncos with no turnovers and that special teams touchdown. 3 penalties, 25 yards for the Raiders, also no turnovers, and they had no defense or special teams touchdowns. Okay, the Broncos are in ball hawk territory at 39 minutes and 3 seconds. Meanwhile, the Raiders only 20 minutes and 57 seconds time of possession. The closing line in this game was Denver minus 8.5. and the over-under was at 40.5. I took the Broncos against the spread at -7.5 with the same total. And I did take Denver to win outright. All right, so Denver does win the game cover. Denver does win the game straight up. But Vegas ended up covering the spread as they lost by 7. And the closing spread was 8.5. So now my straight up record and my ATS record are the same at 4-6. Over-under numbers are 6 and 4 after I projected this game would go over 40.5 points. I think that last field goal by Vegas pushed it over at 41. Okay, now to the longest rivalry in the NFL, as the Bears and Packers got together for the 210th time. And this one goes to the Packers, 28-21, as they take over first place in the NFC North at 9-3-1. Sorry about that. 10 would come next week if they beat the Broncos. Chicago, who was the number 1 seed in the NFC, drops to 9-4 with the loss. All right, starting off with the quarterbacks. Jordan Love, 17 of 25, 234 yards, 9.4 yards per completion, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception with 1 sack taken for 14 yards. He had a 78 QBR and a QB rating of 120.7. As for Chicago, Caleb Williams, 19 of 35, 186 yards at 5.3 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack taken for 9 yards, 40.5 QBR, and a 76.6 passer rating. All right, rushing wise, Josh Jacobs had 20 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown, 4.3 average. And Jalen Reed, 2 for 22 yards and an average of 11. The Packers would run the ball 26 times for 117 at a 4.5 clip and a touchdown. Yeah, I can't believe that either. I'm watching this game, I'm like, why are y'all letting the Saints win this game? What's going on here? For the Bears, DeAndre Swift at 13 carries, 63 yards, and a 4.8 average. And Kyle Monangai, 14 carries, 57 yards, and a 4.1 average. 32 runs for the Bears for 138. That's a 4.3 average with no touchdowns. And they didn't even break a 10-yard run in that game. All right, looking at the receivers, Christian Watson, pretty good game. 4 catches, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 targets, 22.3 average. Bo Melton, 1 catch, 45 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. Jalen Reed, good to see him back. 4 for 31 on 4 targets, 7.8 average. And Luke Musgrave, 2 for 22 on 4 targets and an 11 average. That's 17 receptions for the Packers for 234. That's a 13.8 average with 3 touchdowns on 23 targets. For Chicago, Luther Burden III, this is a rookie. 4 receptions, 67 yards, 6 targets, 16.8 average. Cole Kmet, 2 for 42 on 3 targets and an average of 21. As for touchdowns, Colston Loveland, this is another rookie, former Michigan Wolverine. 4 receptions, 29 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets, 7.3 average. And Olamide Zaccheaus, 2 receptions, 7 yards on 3 targets, and a touchdown. The Bears had 19 receptions for 186, averaging 9.8 per catch, and 2 scores with 28 targets. All right, 1 fumble in the game. It was from the Bears. It was Josh Blackwell. he would fumble and recover. And on defense, leading tacklers are Edgerrin Cooper with 11 tackles for Green Bay, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson with 10 tackles and a pass defense for Chicago. The Packers would have 74 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 3 passes defense, and 6 quarterback hits. The Bears had 52 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 3 passes defense, and 1 quarterback hit. All right, each team had an interception. For the Bears, it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson for 28 yards. And for the Packers, it was Keyshawn Nixon. That was, of course, the game-sealing INT, as Chicago was driving downfield to tie the game. On special teams, we'll start with the Packers. Emmanuel Wilson, 2 kick returns for 55. Bo Melton, 1 for 30. So that's 3 kick returns for 85 yards at an average of 28.3. And for the Bears, Devin Duvernay had 3 kick returns for 69 yards. Josh Blackwell, 1 for 22. That's a total of 4 for 91 yards and an average of 22.8. All right, 1 punt return on each side. For the Bears, it was Devin Duvernay for 6 yards. And for the Packers, it was Romeo Doubs for 7. Cairo Santos, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 41, and 1 for 1 on extra points. That's 7 points scored for the Bears. And Brandon McManus, 4 for 4 on extra points. That's all his points. He didn't have any field goals. Torrey Taylor for the Bears had 4 punts for 208 yards. That's an average of 52 with 1 touchback and 2 inside the 20-yard line. And for the Packers, Daniel Whelan with 3 punts at 145 yards and a 48.3 average with 1 inside the 20-yard line. I don't know if you follow baseball or not, Cajun, but it looks like Kyle Schwarber's staying with the Phillies. He just signed like a 5-year deal. All right, looking at team numbers. All right, the Packers ran 52 plays for 337 yards, 9 total drives, and an average of 6.5 yards per play. And 68 plays for the Bears for 315 yards, 9 total drives as well, averaging 4.6 per play. Chicago had 21 first downs, 12 passing, 7 rushing, and 2 via the penalty. And Green Bay had 17 first downs, 9 passing, 8 rushing, and none via penalties. And both teams did very well on third down. 8 of 16 for the Bears, 8 of 12 for the Packers. Chicago was also 1 for 2 on fourth down. Okay, passing yards. Green Bay had 220 yards, 17 completions, 25 attempts, 8.5 yards per pass, 1 interception thrown, and a sack taken for 14. 177 yards for the Chicago Bears, 19 completions, 35 attempts, 4.9 yards per pass, an interception thrown, and 1 sack taken for 9. Okay, 32 rushes for 138 for the Chicago Bears at 4.3 per rush. 26 carries, 117 yards for the Packers at 4.5 per rush. The Bears were 2 for 4 in the red zone. Packers made good on their 1 red zone trip. 4 penalties, 17 yards for the Bears. 6 penalties, 55 yards for the Packers. The 1 turnover for both teams was an interception. And there were no defense or special team scores. Time of possession goes to Chicago at 33 minutes, 29 seconds. And 26 minutes, 31 seconds for the Packers. Closing line was Green Bay minus 6.5, and the over-under was 43.5. So the spread did not change in this game at all. Okay, I took the Bears with the points at plus 6.5 and the total of 44.5. I did have Green Bay winning, but I had Chicago covering. So my straight up record improves to 5-6. My ATS record drops to 4-7. And over under totals continue to be my friend, as I took the over 44.5 in this game. 49 points were scored. So now on over-unders, I'm 7-4 for the week. As we come to the final Sunday afternoon game of the schedule, and it was a pretty one-sided affair between the Los Angeles Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. Sean McVay's squad ran roughshod on the hapless Cardinals, winning this one 45-17. So LA remains tied atop the NFC West with Seattle at 10-3, while the Cardinals, I think this is their 5th straight loss or their 7th straight loss. No, it's their 5th straight loss. They haven't won a game since beating the Cowboys. They're now 3-10. All right, let's start off with the quarterbacks, beginning with Matthew Stafford. 22 of 31, 281 yards, 9.1 per completion, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks taken, 88.4 QBR, which is really good, just like his quarterback rating of 131.2. Jacoby Brissett, 25 of 44 for 271, 6.2 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 3 sacks taken for 8 yards, 54.9 QBR, and an 80.8 rating. All right, looking at the rushers, Blake Corum ran crazy. 12 carries, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10.7 average. And Kyron Williams, 13 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown, and a 6.5 average. 36 rushes total for the Los Angeles Rams for 249 and a 6.9 average with 3 touchdowns. All right, Crazy Cajun, I'll catch you later, bro. And then for the Cardinals, nothing much to say here. Jacoby Brissett did lead the team with 4 carries, 22 yards, and a 5.5 average. Bam Knight at 7 carries, 16 yards, 2.3 average. And Michael Carter, 3 for 13 on a 4.3 average. That's a total of 14 carries for 51 yards and a 3.6 average. Looking at the receivers, Puka Nacua, known Cardinal killer. 7 catches, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns, 11 targets rather. His longest reception was 32. And he scored twice. He had a 23.9 average. Kobe Parkinson, 3 for 32 and a touchdown, 10.7 average. Devontae Adams, 4 for 29 on 6 targets and a 7.3 average. For the Cardinals, Michael Wilson, 11 catches, 142. He also had 2 touchdowns on 16 targets. That's a 12.9 average. Trey McBride, 5 for 58, 9 targets, and an 11.6 average. All right, the Rams had 22 receptions for 281, 12.8 yards average, with 3 touchdowns and 31 targets. And 25 receptions, 271 yards for the Cardinals, 10.8 average, and 2 touchdowns on 44 targets. No fumbles by either team. Will jump straight to the defenses. Leading tacklers for the Rams are Omar Spates with 6 tackles and a pass defense, and Cam Curl with 6 tackles, a sack, and a quarterback hit. And for the Cardinals, Owen Popo at 10 tackles and a pass defense to lead the way, while Jalen Thompson and PJ Mustipher each had 7 tackles. All right, 50 total tackles for the Rams with 3 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, 6 passes defense, and 11 QB hits. And 80 tackles for the Cardinals with no sacks, no tackles for loss, 2 passes defense, and 2 quarterback hits. All right. Lone interception in the game was courtesy of Nate Landman of the Rams. As for kick returns, you had 3 total for 84 yards at an average of 28. 2 from Jordan Whittington for 54 yards, and 1 from Ronnie Rivers for 30. 3 kick returns from the Cardinals, all from Jalen Brooks at 66 yards, long of 33. Okay, Xavier Smith, 3 punt returns for 46 yards. That's a 15.3 average, and none for the Cardinals. Harrison Mevis, 1 for 1 on field goals, long of 26. 6 for 6 on extra points. That's a total of 9 points. Chad Ryland, 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 38. 2 for 2 on extra points, and a total of 5 points. Ethan Evans, 3 punts at 140 yards, average of 46.7 with 2 touchbacks, long punt of 56. Matt Hawk, 5 punts, 271 yards, 54.2 average, 2 inside the 20-yard line, long punt of 57. All right, looking at team numbers now. All right, the Rams ran 67 plays for 530 yards, 11 total drives, 7.9 yards per play. 61 plays for 314 for the Cardinals, 11 total drives, and a 5.1 average. 30 first downs for LA, 13 passing, 15 rushing, and 2 via the penalty. And 17 for the Cardinals, 15 passing, 2 rushing. The Rams were 3 for 8 on third down with no fourth downs, while Arizona was 4 for 12 on third down rather, with no fourth, or 0 for 1 on fourth down. Okay, passing yards, 281 for the Rams, 22 completions, 31 attempts at 9.1 yards per pass, no interceptions or sacks taken. 263 yards for Arizona, 25 completions, 44 attempts, 5.6 yards per pass, 1 interception thrown, and 3 sacks taken for 8 yards. LA ran 36 times for 249 at 6.9 yards per run. Arizona just 14 carries, 51 yards at 3.6 per rush. Rams near perfect in the red zone, going 3 for 4. Cardinals 2 for 4. 5 penalties, 30 yards in the 5 penalties, 30 yards for the Rams with no turnovers or defensive or special teams touchdowns. 7 penalties, 42 yards for the Cardinals, 1 turnover, that was an interception, with no defensive or special team scores. LA is into ball hawk territory at 35 minutes 4 seconds, while the Cardinals held the ball for 24 minutes and 56 seconds. Okay, the closing line in this game was LA minus 9.5. And the over-under was at 48.5. My pick, ATS, was LA minus 9. And I did take the Rams to win straight up, as this was my lock of the week. So I ended up taking all 3 here. 6-6 straight up, and 5-7 ATS. Over-under totals improved to 8-4, as I projected this game would go over 48 points. The Rams nearly got there by themselves. 62 total points in this game. Next up is a real big matchup in the AFC playoff picture. Oops. There we go. All right, next up is a big game in the AFC playoff picture as the Houston Texans and the #1 scoring and total defense put the clamps on Patrick Mahomes and beat the Kansas City Chiefs in front of a packed house at Arrowhead Stadium 20-10. All right, so the Texans at 8-5 have won 4 in a row, and we'll see if this puts them into a playoff spot. Meanwhile, for the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a damning loss here. They fall to 6-7, and I think they have around a 10% chance now of making the playoffs. And they've already have been knocked out of division title contention, so their 9-year run as division champions has officially ended. So it just keeps getting bad and bad for Andy Reid and the Chiefs. All right, we'll start with the quarterbacks, beginning with C.J. Stroud. 15-31, 203 yards, 6.5 per completion, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He would take 3 sacks for 17 yards. He had a 33.4 QBR and an 80.4 passer rating. And for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, 14-33, 160 yards, 4.8 yards per completion, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. 2 sacks taken for 12 yards, QBR of 19.6, passer rating of 19.8. Ouch. Okay, rushing-wise, Woody Marks, 26 carries, 68 yards, just a 2.6 average. Dare Agumbawale had a rushing touchdown in this game. The Texans would run 31 times for 82 yards and only 2.6 per rush and a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes led the Chiefs in rushing, 7 carries, 59 yards at an 8.4 average. Meanwhile, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco combined to run the ball 21 times for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. So that's 29 total carries for Kansas City for 126, 4.3 per rush, and that 1 score from Kareem Hunt. On the receiving side, Nico Collins, 4 catches, 121 on 8 targets. That's 30.3 per catch, people. Jaden Daniels, 3 for 34, 5 targets, 11.3. And Dalton Schultz, 3 for 22, 4 targets, 7.3 average. 15 total receptions for the Texans for 203, 13.5 yards per reception, with 1 touchdown coming from Woody Marks. And Texans receivers would be targeted 27 times. And for the Chiefs, Xavier Worthy had 3 catches, 55 yards on 4 targets, 18.3 average. Hollywood Brown, just 1 catch on 2 targets for 35. Rashee Rice, 4 for 34, 8 targets, 8.5 per catch. And Tyquan Thornton, 2 for 19 on 3 targets at 9.5 per catch. Only 14 receptions for the Chiefs for 160 at 11.4 per catch, with no touchdowns and 29 targets. All right, no fumbles by either defense. We'll start with Houston. Tony Togiel, 10 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Meanwhile, Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie, and Miles Bryant each has 6 tackles. For the Chiefs, Nick Bolton led the way with 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hit. Drew Tranquil, 10 tackles, a tackle for loss. And Mike Edwards with 7 tackles plus a tackle for loss. George Karlaftis, meanwhile, had 5 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Overall, the Texans with 67 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 7 passes defensed, and 8 quarterback hits. For the Chiefs, 66 tackles, 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 4 passes defensed, and 10 quarterback hits. Okay. The Chiefs' defense obviously didn't have an interception, but the Texans did. They had 3 of them. Azeez Al-Shire, Kamari Lassiter, and Jalen Petrie all had interceptions for this Texans defense. All right, looking at kick returns, you had 2 for the Texans, both from Traymon Smith for 41 yards and a 20.5 average. 4 total kickoff returns for the Chiefs. 2 from Tyquan Thornton for 54 and 2 from Rashad Smith for 50. So that's 4 kick returns for 104 and an average of 26. All right. 1 punt return on each side for the Texans. Shaylen Knoll had 21 yards on his punt return, and Xavier Worthy had nothing on his 1 punt return. Kaimi Fairbairn, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 35, and 2 for 2 on extra points with a total of 8 points. And Harrison Butker, 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 36, 1 for 1 on extra points for a total of 4 points. Tommy Townsend, the one-time Chief, had 8 punts against his ex-mates for 329 yards, 41.1 average, with 3 inside the 20-yard line, long punt of 56. Matt Ariza, 4 punts at 188 yards, 47 average, 3 inside the 20 as well. His long punt was 57. Okay, looking at the team numbers. 64 plays for the Chiefs for 274, 13 drives, and a 4.3 average. 65 plays for the Texans for 268, 13 total drives, and a 4.1 average. 15 first downs for Kansas City, 8 passing, 6 rushing, and 1 via the penalty. 14 first downs for the Texans, 7 passing, 5 rushing, and 2 via the penalty. Houston finished 8 of 18 on 3rd down, while KC was 4 for 14 on 3rd down, 1 for 3 on 4th down. Passing yards, 186 for the Texans, 15 completions, 31 attempts, 5.5 yards per pass. No interceptions thrown, 3 sacks taken for 17. 148 yards for the Chiefs, 14 completions, 33 completions. 14 completions, 33 attempts. Sorry about that. That's 4.2 yards per pass. 3 interceptions thrown, 2 sacks taken for 12 yards. All right, Kansas City had 29 carries for 126 yards at 4.3 yards per rush. Houston had 82 yards on 31 carries and 2.6 yards per rush. Both teams 50% in the red zone. 2 for 4 for Houston, 1 for 2 for Kansas City. 8 penalties, 59 yards for the Texans with no turnovers. 5 penalties for 20 yards for the Chiefs. All 3 turnovers were Patrick Mahomes' interceptions. No defensive or special teams touchdowns by either team. Time of possession is 31 minutes, 58 seconds for Houston, 28 minutes, 2 seconds for the Chiefs. Closing line in this game was Kansas City -5, and the over-under was 41.5. When I wrote these picks down on Wednesday, I took the Texans at +3 and the over-under at 42. I did take Houston to win and to cover straight up, or Houston to win straight up and cover the spread. All right, I am now 7-6 straight up, 6-7 ATS. Over-under totals, I did lose this one as I fall to 8-5. I projected over 42 points. There were only 30. Okay, we made it to our last recap of the week, and that's Monday Night Football. And it was a pretty ugly game as the Los Angeles Chargers defeat the Philadelphia Eagles 22-19 as LA moves its record to 9-4, furthering damaging Kansas City's playoff aspirations. Meanwhile, for the Philadelphia Eagles, that's 3 straight losses. Their record drops to 8-5, and this is the first loss for the Eagles in Los Angeles since 1977 when the Rams beat them at the LA Coliseum. All right, we'll start with the quarterbacks. We'll begin with the Chargers. Justin Herbert. In fact, both these quarterbacks weren't all that good. Justin Herbert was 12 of 26 for 139 yards, 5.3 yards per completion, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. How about 7 sacks taken for 33 yards? 33 QBR and a 59.6 QB rating. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, I think, was much worse. 21 of 40 for 240 yards. That's 6 yards per completion. No touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's right, 4. 1 sack taken for 9 yards. 27.3 QBR. His passer rating not much better at 31.2. Okay, looking at rushing, we'll start with the Chargers. Justin Herbert, 10 carries, 66 yards, 6.6 average. And Omari and Hampton back in the lineup after missing nearly 2 months. 13 carries, 56 yards, 4.3 average. Kamani Vidal, 14 for 44 and a 3.1 average. That's a total of 38 rush attempts for 169 yards, 4.4 yards per rush. For the Eagles, Saquon Barkley finally reaching 100 yards this season. 20 carries for 122 at 6.1 per carry and a touchdown. Jalen Hurts, just 4 carries, 8 yards, averaging 2. 25 rushes for the Philadelphia Eagles for 134 yards. That's a 5.4 average with 1 touchdown. On to the receivers. Kamani Vidal had 1 big catch in that opening drive for 60 yards. He would be targeted 3 times. Keenan Allen, 3 catches, 22 yards on 3 targets, 7.3 average. All told, 12 receptions for 139 at 11.6 per catch, with 1 touchdown from Omari and Hampton on 23 targets. And for the Eagles, A.J. Brown, 6 receptions, 100 yards, 16.7 average on 13 targets. Dallas Goedert, 8 for 78, 10 targets, and a 9.8 average. And Devonta Smith, 4 for 37 yards on 8 targets, 9.3 average. 21 total receptions for the Eagles for 240 yards, 11.4 yards per reception, no touchdowns, and 38 targets. Okay, there were a lot of fumbles in this game, 5 to be exact. You had 3 from the Chargers, 2 of those from Justin Herbert, and he would lose 1 of them. And Deshaun Hand had the other lost fumble in this game. 2 recoveries by Scott Matlock and Troy Dye. The Eagles had 2 fumbles, 1 from Jalen Hurts after he threw an interception in the second quarter. He would lose 1. He would recover and lose it on that 1 play. And Britton Covey also with a fumble, which he would recover. Byron Young also recovered a fumble for Philly. On to the defense. Leading tacklers for the Chargers include Dayon Henley with 7 tackles, 1 pass defense, and 1 quarterback hit. 5 tackles for Tony Jefferson with a pass defense. Tarheeb Still with 5 tackles, 1 TFL, and a pass defense. And Khalil Mack, 5 tackles, a TFL, and 2 quarterback hits. And for the Eagles, Reed Blankenship, Jalix Hunt, Zach Bond, and Byron Young, each with 8 tackles apiece. Reed Blankenship also had a tackle for loss. Meanwhile, Jalix Hunt, with his 8 tackles, he had 2.5 sacks, a TFL, and 3 quarterback hits. Zach Bond, with his 8 tackles, had half a sack and a quarterback hit. And Byron Young, with his 8 tackles, had 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Nakobe Dean finished with 7 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss, plus 2 quarterback hits. Nolan Smith, 6 tackles and a quarterback hit. Jordan Davis, 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Jalen Phillips, 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a pass defense. And Adoree Jackson had 5 tackles and 2 passes defensed. All right. As for our 2 other ones, Cooper DeJean, 3 tackles, 2 passes defense, and Quinyon Marshall with 2 tackles. All right, the Eagles finished with 85 tackles, 7 sacks, which is a season high, 7 tackles for loss, 5 passes defense, and 11 quarterback hits. So our pass rush came alive in this one. The Chargers, meanwhile, had 65 tackles, 1 sack, 7 tackles for loss, 10 passes defense, and 6 quarterback hits. Okay, we had the interceptions. The Chargers had 4. Cam Hart for 27 yards, Deshaun Hand for 7, Dante Jackson for 6, and Tony Jefferson for 3. The Eagles had 1 from Adoree Jackson for 1 yard. All right. 7 total kickoff returns for the Chargers for 167, 23.9 average, long was 28. You had 5 and 111 for Kamani Vidal, and 2 and 56 for Hassan Haskins. The Eagles had 6 kick returns for 159 at 26.5 per return. Britton Colvey had 4 for 103, and Will Shipley had 2 for 56. All right. As for punt returns, Britton Colvey had 3 for 54 yards at an average of 18. Darius Davis had just 1, but for minus 10 yards. Jake Elliott was 4 for 5 on field goals, long of 54, and 1 for 1 on extra points. He would score 13 of Philadelphia's 19 points. And Cameron Dicker, a perfect 5 for 5 on field goals, long of 54, and 1 for 1 on extra points. He would score 16 points. Braden Mann with 3 punts at 155 yards, 51.7 average, 1 touchback, long punt of 60. And J.K. Scott, 5 punts for 256 at 51.2 on average, 1 inside the 20, and his long punt was 57. All right. Okay. All right. The Eagles ran 66 plays for 365 yards, 14 total drives, 5.5 yards per play. 71 plays and 275 yards for the Chargers, 13 total drives, 3.9 yards per play. All right. Philadelphia had 19 first downs, 12 passing, 5 rushing, and 2 via the penalty. 16 first downs for the Chargers, 5 passing, 9 rushing, and also 2 via the penalties. 4 for 13 third downs for the Eagles, 7 of 19 third downs for the Chargers, with no fourth downs by either team. Okay. The Eagles had 231 passing yards, 21 completions, 40 attempts, 5.6 yards per pass, 4 interceptions thrown, which is not good, and only 1 sack taken for 9 yards. 106 yards for the Chargers, 12 completions and 26 attempts. That's 3.2 yards per pass, 1 interception thrown, but they did take 7 sacks for 33 yards. Okay, looking at rushing, 38 carries, 169 yards for the Chargers, 4.4 yards per run. 25 carries, 134 yards for the Eagles, 5.4 yards per run. Philly was 0 for 2 in the red zone, LA 1 for 3. 6 penalties, 53 yards for the Eagles. All told, 5 turnovers for the Eagles. 1 lost fumble, and the 4 interceptions by Jalen Hurts. 7 penalties, 55 yards for the Chargers, 3 turnovers. That includes 2 lost fumbles and 1 interception. Neither team scored a touchdown defensively or on special teams. 38 minutes, 5 seconds is the time of possession for the Chargers. That puts them in ball hawk territory. And the Eagles, 29 minutes and 26 seconds. Closing line was Philadelphia -1, and the over-under was 42. When I wrote these picks down on Wednesday, I took the Chargers plus 2.5 at an over-under of 40.5, and I picked LA to win outright, and I was right here. So, for the week, my straight-up record ends up being 8-6, 571 win percentage. Against the spread, I finished 7-7, 500 win percentage. And on over-unders, I was 9-5 for a 643 win percentage. Through 14 weeks, my straight-up record is 133, 74, and 1. That's a 641 win percentage, so I'm about 64% on my picks. ATS, I'm 98, 106, and 4. That's about 48%, a 481 win percentage. And on over-unders, I'm at 109, 95, and 4, which is a 534 win percentage, so about 53%. All right, so that's the recap. Now we can dive into the Week 15 power rankings. And we'll start at the bottom where the Las Vegas Raiders retain the number 32 spot with a record of 2-11. They'll face the Eagles in Philadelphia Sunday. Then you have the New York Giants down to number 31 at 2-11. They'll host the Commanders. Moving up to number 30, you have the Tennessee Titans at 2-11. They visit the 49ers in San Francisco, Santa Clara to be specific. The Cleveland Browns at 3-10 fall to number 29. They'll face the Bears at Soldier Field. Moving up to number 28, the New Orleans Saints at 3-10. They'll host the Panthers. No change for the next 6 teams. The New York Jets stay at number 27. They're 3-10, and they visit the Jaguars. The Arizona Cardinals remain at number 26 at 3-10. They'll visit the Texans in Houston. The Washington Commanders remain number 25 with a record of 3-10. They'll face the Giants at MetLife. The Minnesota Vikings hold steady at number 24 with a record of 5-8. They'll face the Cowboys Sunday night in Dallas. Number 23, you have the Atlanta Falcons at 4-9. They'll visit the Buccaneers on Thursday night. And number 22, also with a 4-9 record, are the Cincinnati Bengals. They'll host the Baltimore Ravens. Slipping to number 21, the Carolina Panthers at 7-6. They'll face the Saints in New Orleans. Number 20, moving up, are the Pittsburgh Steelers at 7-6, hosting the Miami Dolphins on Monday night. Number 19, dropping to 6-7, are the Kansas City Chiefs. The Dallas Cowboys fell to number 18, 6-1, as they'll host the Vikings on Sunday night. Up to number 17 are the Miami Dolphins at 6-7. They visit the Steelers on Monday. The Indianapolis Colts, now without Daniel Jones for the rest of the season, took a slip to number 16 at 8-5, as they'll visit the Seahawks. Number 15, moving down, are the Baltimore Ravens at 6-7 as they prepare for round 2 with Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Down to number 14 are the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles at 8-5. Hopefully a bounce back game against the lowly Raiders will help calm things. Taking a dive to number 13 are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 7-6. They host the Falcons on Thursday night. Jumping to number 12 are the Jacksonville Jaguars at 9-4 and leading the AFC South. They'll host the Jets. Falling out of the top 10 down to number 11 are the Chicago Bears at 9-4. They'll host the Cleveland Browns and that killer defense. Jumping up to number 10, the Los Angeles Chargers at 9-4. They'll visit the Chiefs at Arrowhead this week. Inching up a spot to number 9, the Detroit Lions at 8-5. They'll face the Rams at SoFi on Sunday afternoon. Moving up to number 8, the San Francisco 49ers at 9-4. They'll host the Tennessee Titans. Up a couple spots to number 7 are the Houston Texans at 8-5 as they prepare to host the Arizona Cardinals. And the top 6 are the same. The Green Bay Packers stay at number 6 with a record of 9-3-1. They'll visit the Broncos on Sunday. At number 5 are the Los Angeles Rams at 10-3, hosting the Lions. At number 4 are the Buffalo Bills at 9-4. They'll face the Patriots in Foxborough. Number 3 is the Seattle Seahawks at 10-3, hosting the Colts minus Indiana Jones. Number 2 are the Denver Broncos at 11-2. They got a big game at home against the Packers. And retaining my number 1 spot are the New England Patriots at 11-2 as they prepare for their rematch with the Buffalo Bills. Okay, so those are my power rankings. We have one more thing to look at, and that's the current playoff picture in the NFL going into Week 15. And we'll start, as always, in the AFC. Your division leaders, I should say, or your top 4, whichever you prefer, are the Denver Broncos in the West, the New England Patriots in the East, the Jacksonville Jaguars in the South, and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the North. All right. So we'll start at number 1, which is the Denver Broncos with a record of 11-2. 3-1 record versus the West, 7-2 in the AFC. 376 strength of schedule, 325 strength of victory. Denver wins the tiebreaker over New England based on best win percentage in conference games. This will move the Patriots down to number 2, also 11-2. 3-0 record versus the East, 6-2 in the AFC, 349 strength of schedule, 350 strength of victory. Sitting at number 3 are the Jacksonville Jaguars at 9-4, 3-1 record versus the North, 6-2 in the AFC, 509 strength of schedule, 462 strength of victory. And the last of the division leaders are the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 4th spot at 7-6. 3-1 record versus the North, 6-3 in the AFC. 536 strength of schedule, 440 strength of victory. Your 3 wildcard teams as of right now would be the Los Angeles Chargers, the Buffalo Bills, and the Houston Texans. Starting at the number 5 spot with the Chargers with a record of 9-4. 4-0 record versus the West, 7-2 in the AFC, 420 strength of schedule, 419 strength of victory. Los Angeles wins the tiebreaker over Buffalo based on best win percentage in conference games. This pushes the Bills back to number 6, also with a record of 9-4. 2-2 versus the East, 6-3 in the AFC, 462 strength of schedule, 419 strength of victory. And right now, sitting in that number 7 spot, the Houston Texans at 8-5. 4-1 record versus the South, 7-2 in the AFC, 580 strength of schedule, 490 strength of victory. Houston wins the tiebreaker over Indianapolis based on head-to-head winning percentage, dropping the Colts to number 8 and presently outside of the playoffs with a record of 8-5. 2-2 record in the South, 6-4 in the AFC, 467 strength of schedule, 375 strength of victory. Next, we have a 3-way tie between the Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Miami Dolphins. Alright, we'll start at number 9 with the Baltimore Ravens at 6-7. 2-2 record in the North, 4-5 in the AFC, 479 strength of schedule, 372 strength of victory. Baltimore wins the tiebreakers over Kansas City and Miami based on best win percentage in conference games. This drops the Chiefs to number 10. They're also 6-7. 1-2 record versus the West, 3-5 in the AFC, 530 strength of schedule, 372 strength of victory. Kansas City wins the tiebreaker over Miami based on best win percentage in conference games, dropping the Dolphins down to number 11, also at 6-7. 3-2 record versus the East, 3-6 in the AFC, 462 strength of schedule, 321 strength of victory. At number 12, and somehow still alive, are the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-9. 3-1 record versus the North, 4-5 in the AFC. 577 strength of schedule, 481 strength of victory. The remaining 4 teams in the AFC are all out of the picture completely. We have a tie between the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. So we'll start at number 13 with the New York Football Jets with a record of 3-10. 0-4 versus the East, 2-7 in the AFC. 518 strength of schedule, 282 strength of victory. New York wins the tiebreaker over Cleveland based on head-to-head winning percentage. This drops the Browns to number 14 with a record of 3-10. 0-4 versus the North, 2-7 in the AFC, 464 strength of schedule, 449 strength of victory. And there's a tie at the bottom of the conference with the Raiders and Titans. We'll start at number 15 with the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-11. 0-5 versus the West, 2-8 in the AFC. 577 strength of schedule, 500 strength of victory. Las Vegas wins the tiebreaker over Tennessee based on head-to-head win percentage, dropping the Tennessee Titans down to number 16, also with a record of 2-11. 0-5 record versus the South, 1-9 in the AFC. 592 strength of schedule, 231 strength of victory. And that's the AFC playoff picture. Now we'll jump over to the NFC. Your division leaders as of right now would be the Los Angeles Rams in the West, the Green Bay Packers in the North, the Philadelphia Eagles in the East, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the South. We'll start at number 1 with the Los Angeles Rams at 10-3. 3-1 record versus the West, 5-3 in the NFC. 527 strength of schedule, 500 strength of victory. Los Angeles wins the tiebreaker over Seattle based on head-to-head win percentage, and these two teams will play in Seattle in Week 16. At number 2 are the Green Bay Packers at 9-3-1. 4-0 record versus the North, 7-2-1 in the AFC. 435 strength of schedule, 419 strength of victory. I meant to say NFC, not AFC. Hanging on to the number 3 spot are the Philadelphia Eagles at 8-5. 2-2 record versus the East, 7-3 in the NFC. 541 strength of schedule, 519 strength of victory. And at number 4, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 7-6. 2-1 record versus the South, 5-4 in the NFC. 527 strength of schedule, 440 strength of victory. Tampa Bay wins the tiebreaker over Carolina based on best win percentage in common games. Although Carolina does have the better NFC record than Tampa Bay, the Bucs still have that tiebreaker with the common game. Alright, your 3 wild cards as of right now would be the Seahawks, 49ers, and Bears. Alright, starting at number 5, we have the Seattle Seahawks with a record of 10-3. 2-2 record versus the West, 6-3 in the NFC, 432 strength of schedule, 362 strength of victory. At number 6 are the San Francisco 49ers at 9-4. 4-1 versus the West, 8-2 in the NFC. 467 strength of schedule, 385 strength of victory. San Francisco wins the tiebreaker over Chicago based on best win percentage in conference games. This will bump the Chicago Bears down to number 7 with a record of 9-4. 1-3 record versus the North, 6-3 in the NFC. 408 strength of schedule, 346 strength of victory. On the outside of the playoffs at number 8, you have the Detroit Lions at 8-5. 1-3 record versus the North, 5-4 in the NFC. 464 strength of schedule, 389 strength of victory. At number 9 are the Carolina Panthers at 7-6. 2-1 record versus the South, 5-3 in the NFC. 515 strength of schedule, 473 strength of victory. At number 10, the Dallas Cowboys at 6-1. 3-1 record versus the East, 3-5-1 in the NFC. 470 strength of schedule, 308 strength of victory. And at number 11, still in this thing, are the Minnesota Vikings at 5-8. 2-2 record versus the North, 3-5 in the NFC. 530 strength of schedule, 415 strength of victory. The remaining 5 teams are all eliminated. We'll start at number 12 with the Atlanta Falcons at 4-9. 1-3 versus the South, 3-5 in the NFC. 521 strength of schedule, 385 strength of victory. We have a 3-way tie with the Cardinals, Saints, and Commanders. We'll start at number 13, which resides the Arizona Cardinals at 3-10. 0-5 record in the West, 3-7 in the NFC. 592 strength of schedule, 423 strength of victory. Arizona wins the tiebreaker over New Orleans based on head-to-head win percentage. Meanwhile, Arizona also wins the tiebreaker over Washington based on best win percentage in conference games. So as a result, the Saints fall to number 14 with a record of 3-10. 2-2 record versus the South, 3-7 in the NFC. 556 strength of schedule, 410 strength of victory. New Orleans wins the tiebreaker over Washington based on best win percentage in conference games. And then that will drop the Washington Commanders down to number 15. 3-10 record. 1-1 versus the East, 1-7 in the NFC. 521 strength of schedule, 333 strength of victory. And at the bottom at number 16 are the New York Football Giants at 2-11. 1-3 record versus the East, 1-8 in the NFC. 598 strength of schedule, 654 strength of victory. Okay, that was a pretty long one, and I think it's going to be like this from now on. But anyway, that is the Week 14 edition of the week that was, as we looked at the player and team statistical numbers from Week 14 of the NFL, plus the Week 15 power rankings, and a look at the present NFL playoff picture. All right. The final college football playoff rankings are coming tomorrow. I will be live tomorrow, probably about noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. That would be 10 to 11 a.m. my time here in Phoenix. So make sure you join me for that. Also on Thursday, I'll have my Week 15 NFL picks as we are now going down the final stretch of the season. All right, so that again is on Thursday, so join me for that as well.